Hello. Good morning,
Morning,
everyone.
Sam.
Good morning.
How are
Good
you?
morning.
I'm good. What about you?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I spoke to you yesterday, so I'm fine.
Good morning.
Good morning, Antonio.
Morning.
Good
Morning,
Good
morning,
morning,
everyone.
Chris.
everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How was your week?
Morning, Mr. Samjala. Morning.
Excellent.
Good morning, Mr. Sharat. You're on board today.
How are you? How are you? Everything going good?
I'm great. I'm great. What about you?
Yeah, well and good. Not a complaint.
Okay.
So is
Wow.
the third class, third session?
Is this the third or the fourth?
This is
Yes.
first.
Third. Okay. Good. Good. Can't complain. Can't complain. Let's go. So, okay. The recording. I'm seeing people who's asking to record personally.
Yeah.
You
I
guys,
think it was a problem in the last class. So maybe we'll record just from our side and
no, see, I will give you an because last class this Zoom we had to renew the license for Zoom, so it's again renewed back, so no problem. So the recording which is going on now will be sent to you tomorrow. The link will be sent to you. Okay. So immediately,
okay.
like how we do all the time,
Yeah.
so we will give you the recordings exactly, or it will be uploaded in the YouTube right away. No problem. Okay. So that
Okay,
won't be a
but
problem. Don't worry,
sorry, is it
guys.
fine if I record on my PC? Because then I've shared it between different computers because I'm moving around and I can't download the information every time from YouTube. So if it's possible, if I can get permission
No,
to record
Herman,
from my
see,
side.
Herman, see, that's well and good, I understand, but there's a copyright for this from NEBOSH. So all the recordings which we record should be taken from our side, and we should give a username and password for you in accordance to see the video. It's not downloadable. Sorry for that. Okay, so I will put it on the YouTube, or I will give you the same link with the username. You can access through that anytime. No problem. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Any doubts, guys? Any doubts which you all had before, like about the Moodle, about the sessions and anything? I'm here to help you. Everyone has this. Yes, Mr. La.
Yes, I have a doubt in regarding the quiz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually did the quiz, and when I submitted, some of my answers were correct, but in different words. But the ones you provided in the platform is the same, but written differently, and mine is wrong. So I don't know.
Okay, so I'll tell
Sorry,
you the
the same
reason
thing for
behind it.
me as well.
Sorry?
Sorry for jumping.
Yeah.
Sorry for jumping. It's Mickey Briab. The same thing as what Stella she said. That's what happened to me to the quiz also. I answered it most of it, but on my own way, it's almost similar, but it shows you even if you didn't put even a full stop, it will give you X. Just we need
Exactly.
clarification for that. Thank you.
Exactly. So, okay, I'll give you a solution for this. See, since we are been looking on to the question papers and exams for the past 8 to 9 years, every year there is a change in the answer paper. I hope you all know about this. I'll give you an idea. Every year there is a change in answer paper and the way of writing. Before online, it was offline, where you have to go there to the center and write. After making it online, every year they are upgrading into new things, where they want you to make some words and punctuations, everything perfectly according to a line. See, getting passed in NEBOSH nowadays, I don't think so. You have to study a lot, but getting good marks as NEBOSH is very important. For us, it's a very good achievement because we have 89 to 90 pass percentage in IG1 and IG2. Because my students are students which we are writing here. I want them to write perfectly, not just to pass and just go and just because knowledge is the power. You can pass by any time. The quiz which we have given there, all these quizzes, are a little bit tricky, where it makes you more conscious. I know you are learning a small subject where you can answer all the questions within seconds, right? It can be done within seconds. Like 20, 25 questions is not a big deal. But I have given some tricky ones there where you find these things in your NEBOSH answer paper. You know the 3000 words which you're going to write in NEBOSH IG1. Okay. That 3000 words should contain proper high standard level English words with punctuations where it will be very useful for you to get a high score level marks. So don't worry about regarding this quiz. I'll keep on updating each classes. So this, if you already taken the quiz, a trainer will review the quiz, and even you will get an immediate result. It's up to you. I'll give you next week, this weekend, I will revise one more quiz. So whereas you can check the quiz for a new question and answers. Okay. So please,
Okay.
if the answer is wrong, make note of which answer is wrong, and you can know the trick in that. That's the thing I want to know about people, because quiz you can attend. Okay. Any other doubts?
Are we supposed to do the quiz on the online, or are we supposed to copy the questions and send it via email? Because that was
La,
the
la, la.
request last week.
You just have to do in the Moodle where we can see the results there. Right?
Okay, so
Got it?
okay, yeah, that was not
Right.
what we decided last week.
Sorry? That was
Last
what?
week it was requested that we copy the questions and then onto Word and then send that via emale. And
Okay,
not
so that
answer
was
in the model.
that was the thing. So which BD who was the one who was suggested you? The last one. Okay, fine. Let me just check with the people, because last week was not there. Let me check with the people. Even though if you see, even if you finish the quiz then and there, you get the answers, right? I mean the results, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So keep a note of that only. If my BD has suggested you to send you like that, well and good, no problem, not to complain. Okay. Anything else?
Okay. No, nothing else.
Everyone has submitted all these registration forms and everything. Emirates ID, the registration forms, the student's handbook is good, is done.
Done from my side.
Yeah,
Good,
me
good.
as well. I've already done.
Okay. So I'll keep a note on that. I'll keep checking. Okay. Yes, Mr. Samjala.
Yeah. From what Heyman was saying, yeah, I requested that the quizzes be prepared on separate sheets and sent so that I can actually
Review it, no
review.
problem.
Yeah.
No,
So
okay. Even I'll
yes.
try to give you an list of the students' marks and everything. Okay. Don't worry about that. I'll
Okay.
try to push for that also.
Okay.
Any doubts, Mr. Samjala? All well, good to go?
No.
Okay. Anyways, guys, let's continue. Have a good day. Sir, yes, you can start.
Can you make me host, please?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Done. Can you make me the co-host?
Okay. Okay. Good morning once again, and welcome to day 4. I think today is a 4th class.
We didn't finish elementary, yeah?
This is class number 3.
Yes, we are
Third
still on
Thursday.
elementary.
3.4.
We're going to start 3.4 or 3.5 today. Elementary is the most, it has up to 8 units. So it's somehow, yeah, it somehow, it covers a
Yeah.
lot of topics. Covers a lot of
Sorry,
topics.
sorry, I just had a question before we start.
Sorry?
I just had one request before we start.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to know your thoughts. Actually, it's the same question what we asked for the organizer. The same question what Stella was asking about the quiz.
No,
There are
I'm still to come to that. I'm going to talk to the organization because there should be a unique system of preparing the quizzes and everything.
Yeah, because what I was
I'm going to discuss that with the organization, and we'll try to see maybe they should make it more of multiple choice than, because different persons come with different ways of answering the questions, and when they have already have a particular style, it becomes a problem, especially when it comes to explanations. So
exactly.
I will discuss that with the organization, and definitely they will we'll try to update it.
Yeah, because it's honestly, it's very disappointing. It's the same answer, but we are using different words probably.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know the issue. So I will discuss that. That was one of the more reasons I actually wanted to see the answers, you know, because
like from my side,
I've gone through the quizzes as well.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Sam, did you get the emails? I forwarded my email on Friday. I don't know if that you received my stuff, for instance.
I saw just for Heyman. I think that's the only person I saw the quizzes.
Okay,
I saw Heyman. I think they sent only for Heyman 1 and 2.
Okay, so you did receive it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I actually look at it by 3 p.m. If we have time, we'll look at these quizzes together to see exactly what we've done. And thank you, Heyman, for submitting like I requested. Please, let's do same. Let's do same like what Heyman did.
Okay, I think we must maybe just explain again so that everyone is on board.
Okay. So last week we discussed a lot of things. Can anybody share with me anything you learned in the last class before we look at the other units?
Can I go?
No, sure.
The most important thing is top management must be involved with health and safety. You said it multiple times. Top management, top management, top management.
Yes, we're looking at, we were more on the health and safety policy and management systems, how they operate, how they function, what are the responsibilities, what is the role of top management in an organization. We looked at the policy, we looked at the different sections of a policy, the statement of intent, the organization, which is all about the roles and responsibilities, the arrangements. We looked at the general and specific arrangements and how we can relate these aspects, or how we can incorporate these aspects into the management system for effectiveness. So any other person can.
We also looked at ways workers perceive hazards.
Okay.
Workers' perception of hazards. And we had a demonstration with the image of the old man.
Yeah. So what did we say about perception? Anybody who can? We looked at perception, we looked at some factors.
Yeah, some persons will maybe perceive something more hazardous or less hazardous than the next person. So something might be, for me, not that big of an issue, but for the next person it can maybe be a big issue. So that's why we've got health and safety procedures and policies in place, So everybody, so everything has got, it's going under the same, it's got the same, how can I say, it's not more or less when it comes to process and stuff. It has to be handled the same, higher or lower risk.
Yeah. We
We-
looked at
Factors
some
that can,
fact. Yes, Stella.
yeah, we looked at factors that can distort perception. For example, drugs, age,
That's good.
stress, ill health,
That's great.
and
So
so many more.
yeah, so those are some of the factors that can influence behavior at work when it comes to perception. We talked of the sensory input. We looked at your IQ. We looked at your age. How does your age affect your reasoning, affect your perception, your language, your level of competence? What did we say is the composition for competence? If we say someone is competent, what does it comprise of?
That means they've got the knowledge and skills to perform a certain task. And also they've got experience and training.
There were 5 aspects we talked about.
Skill was one. I remember that was the one you wanted the
Skills,
most.
yes.
And then experience, knowledge, training.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I'm missing one.
There's one last one.
No, I can't remember the last one now. I'm still upset because I can't record.
Yeah, and the last one was ability.
Ability.
So we're going to start with assessing risk. This aspect is very crucial. I want us to really pay attention to this because it is also part of our IG2 when it comes to the risk assessment. So your knowledge in this particular topic will help you to prepare your risk assessment when the time comes. So did anybody review this particular concept of assessing risk?
I did go through the module week before last week.
Yes, yes. I attempted.
So what can you say? What can you summarize? Can anybody summarize whatever they reviewed in this aspect when it comes to risk assessments?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Stella.
So I can say that risk assessment is an evaluation of risk or arising from hazards, and also identifying measures like protective and preventive measures.
Okay.
Yeah. And also taking into consideration everything that has been put in place to see if the level of risk is acceptable or not.
Okay. That's great. Any other person?
I think I'm
The
agreeing
process
with
is
Stella.
evaluating the risk.
Yes, Kip.
Risk assessment, it's a process of evaluating the risks. It can be the hazards.
Yeah. So what is the risk?
The probability and how severe it would be.
Okay. And is risk assessment, is it a legal requirement or not?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
And also the aim of risk assessment is to eliminate hazards and to control risk.
Okay, that's great. We'll be looking at all that. We'll be looking at how we can manage risk, how we can manage risks in our workplaces, the different steps in conducting a risk assessment, who are those who are involved, how can a risk assessment be suitable and sufficient, who are those who can act as key players when it comes to preparing a risk assessment. So we're going to look at all that right now. So I don't know if we have our models. Can we access our models and these materials that we have?
Got mine open.
Okay.
Yeah, mine also open.
Sorry, what's the question?
Yes.
No, I didn't hear it. What's the question?
You must open your model and then go to the element 3 that we are busy with.
No, okay, all right.
If I am correct.
So we have a brief history. The International Labour Office, the ILO, it has established a number of health and safety conventions and recommendations, like we saw in element 1, when we looked at how to manage health and safety. We saw the moral, the legal, and the financial aspects of good health and safety practice. And the International Labour Organization is also conducting health and safety risk assessments as part of their practices, which is required by different organizations to also emulate. We see also that a good number of organizations who are part of the International Labour Organizations, they have also established their specific requirements when it comes to risk assessments. And it is not the same for every organization. We have different structures, different types of risk assessments, which we're going to see. We have a qualitative, we have a quantitative, we have a semi-qualitative type of risk assessment, depending on your organization, depending on the type of activities that are involved in your organization. So we also see that the European Union, it has established a requirement to conduct risk assessments in its framework way back in 1989. So this is just a brief history when it comes to conducting risk assessments. And it's very important in the management of different activities in our organizations to ensure that the risk is at an acceptable level. So we saw what is a hazard. We said a hazard is something that has a potential to cause harm. and we looked at different examples. I promised to give a picture so that we can identify some of the hazards. I'm going to do that after our break today. We're going to see different activities that are going on, and then we try to identify the hazards, the risk, and we come out with control measures. That is part of the risk assessment. So we looked at the risk, which we say is the likelihood or the probability that the harm or loss will come out, taking into account the extent and severity of the outcome. So we have risks in two different categories. We have a qualitative way of measuring the risk, such as the high, the low, the medium. That is one way. And we also have the quantitative, which we are using different data to assess or to measure the risk. So we're going to look at all that. So there is another aspect of risk which is called risk profiling. It is basically a risk assessment, but it deals with the probable impacts, the likelihood and the different impacts when it comes to a particular activity in an organization. So here they have given us some brief definitions on how to go about risk profiling. So they say it's a process used at a strategic level to recognize the range of risk that threaten an organization, along with the likelihood and the probable impacts of those risks. So it is just a means on how to actually manage those risks we consider threats in our organization. If we say, for example, you are in a construction industry, what are those specific risks or specific activities which you consider a threat? When we talk of threat, we are looking at the level of the level of risk that is involved carrying out that particular activity. How do we manage these activities with high level of risk? So this is just what a risk profiling is. It is the level 3. NEBOSH has given us just the basics. When you're doing the diploma, you will see the different levels of risk profiling. You have risk reduction. There are 4 different levels, but we are not going into that. So for now, we just our understanding should be on the point that it is also another form of managing risk in organizations, but we are looking at those different activities that pose high threats to that organization. So we are looking into detail the risk assessment, and we said that the risk assessment is a careful examination of what in work could cause harm, so that we can weigh whether we are taking the precautions we are taking the necessary control measures as we should to prevent harm, or we need to do more. We need to put in more control measures to ensure that that particular activity and the risk it poses is at an acceptable level. So what are the objectives? We're going to look at the objectives. What are the objectives of a risk assessment? Anybody? One of the objectives of the risk assessment is to identify the identification of hazards at work. That's one of the objectives. The evaluation of the risks from the hazards, and also deciding how to control these risks. We also need to implement a control strategy. Maybe having a risk matrix that has a list of activities and different control measures, and how these control measures can be properly managed. So when it comes to the risk profiling, it says each organization has its own risk profile. It varies, like I said earlier, it varies depending on the type of industry in which you are. So the risk profile, it takes into consideration the risk management controls that are in place so that their effectiveness can be easily accessed. And if further risk controls need to be identified, then we do that and also prioritize them. So the risk profiling process, there are four different stages in a risk profile process. First, we identify the health and safety threats that are being faced in the organization. So these threats, like I said, we are looking at those safety risks that threaten the organization, those activities you consider high risk. Let's just take, for example, construction industry. You have activities like work at height. What again are high risks, some high risk activities when it comes to construction?
Working at heights.
Working at heights.
Working
Yes.
in enclosed environments.
Yes, confined space.
Confined spaces. Working alone.
Lone working.
Working with electricity.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Working with machinery.
Yeah, working with machinery, depending on the type of machinery you're working with.
Yes.
So when you've identified these activities, which you know pose very high risk, then you identify the health and safety impacts and the business impacts that might come as a result of that particular activity. So if you take work at height, we've identified work at height. So what are those things that can impact the business when it comes to that particular activity?
Well,
Now you need to identify the hazards.
Falling.
Maybe somebody will fall down, get accident.
Falling, injury.
So if we take work at height, what are the hazards we can identify when it comes to work at height? Let's just say you're working on a high-rise building.
You need to check if your harness is up to date. It's still, if it's not one that if it needs to be checked.
So
I know
if
that
you
your body
identify,
harnesses.
okay,
Yeah. Faulty equipment.
Yes.
like what?
Scaffolding.
Improper
Scaffolding.
wearing of safety equipment.
Wearing a safety belt, not wearing a safety belt.
Okay, yeah, all of what you've identified, they are correct. So how will these aspects which you have identified, how will it affect the organization?
So I meet outside today.
They pose a threat to the health of the worker. And if, I don't know.
Can I try?
Yes.
Okay, if there is any accident occurs, let's say if an employee, if he fall down because of not using the safety belt, so for the injury, or it might be a death also, so the organization, it will cost them legally and financially.
Okay, that's good. So we are looking at the impact. What will be the consequences of maybe an accident as a result of that activity to the organization? So if somebody falls from height and unfortunately dies, so we need to start investigating. The enforcement agencies will come in. It might cause the business to completely stop, and many other consequences that can affect the organization. So then we are looking at what are the control measures we need to put in place, like identifying how well each threat is currently controlled. What is it we are already doing? That is what that statement means. What are we already doing to control that particular situation? So if we say we have a work at height activity, then we should, in the very first place, we have a proper scaffolding erection, like you guys have said. It should be inspected on weekly basis. It should be erected by a competent person. These are just examples of what controls are already in place. And maybe this person has been working at height without a fall protection or full body harness. Maybe there was a gap in that particular aspect. Then as a further control, you can identify that the organization should purchase full body harness for every worker, just to ensure that in case of any maybe fall, that worker is protected using the full body harness. So this process, it is the same like a risk assessment process, but it is looking at the high risk activities in an organization. And in our IG2 report, the second part of it, which is talking about you identifying the different hazards. So it has 5 different columns. You need to, there is a hazard category and a hazard which you need to identify. Maybe you take, for example, noise. What is the effect? Who are those who might be harmed? And how are they going to be harmed? We're going to look at all that. What are you already doing? Which is what we're just discussing. What are the controls already in place? What further controls you need to put in place to ensure that the risk is at an acceptable level? And you need to also give it time scales. And who are those who are responsible for carrying out these further controls which you have put in place? So after identifying what we are already doing or what the organization is currently doing to prevent harm from that particular activity, we also need to identify the likelihood of each threat that is occurring. So we're going to see the likelihood, whether it is low, whether it is high, whether it is medium. It depends on your judgment. And lastly, we identify the priority for each threat. So we see there is a 5-stage process in a risk profiling. So this just gives us a clue of how the risk assessment process is. From the activity, who are those who might be affected as a result of that activity? What are the controls you have put in place? What further controls you need to put in place? And what are the time scales? Who are those who are responsible for implementing those controls that have been added, just to ensure that everyone is safe carrying out the activity? So we said earlier that the risk assessment is a legal requirement. And the aim of the risk assessment is to ensure that hazards are eliminated and risks minimized, by the correct application of the relevant standards. So we have different standards like we saw in the very first page of the risk assessment process. So we talked of the objectives of a risk assessment. To prevent death and personal injury, to prevent other types of loss incidents, to prevent breaches of statute law that can lead to enforcement actions and prosecutions, and also to prevent the direct and indirect costs that follow from accidents. So we have a lot of objectives. So the statement goes that what can cause a risk assessment to be suitable and sufficient? How can a risk assessment be suitable and sufficient?
Well, if all of the objectives are reached, so if your objectives are like your targets and you reach them, then it should be suitable and sufficient. If there's no deaths or injuries are minimized, then it's suitable and sufficient.
Okay.
And then everyone is protected. and
Yes,
safe.
everyone is protected. Any other tribe? So for a risk assessment to be suitable and sufficient, that particular risk assessment should be able to identify all the hazards that are involved. That risk assessment should be able to control, there should be a control measure that is put in place for each of the different aspects of that activity that has been identified. And like we looked at the SMART objectives, the risk assessment must be reliable. It must be reliable and it must remain current. It must remain current for a period of time. So these are the 4 aspects you should consider for a risk assessment to be suitable and sufficient. This is also a very fertile question. They always ask. So take note about it. So when it comes to suitability, what do we mean? We are looking at the type of process used to assess the risk. And sufficiency, we are looking at what? The amount of process to be done, or the amount of work that is involved in that process to be completed. So who are those you can involve? Who are those you can, when we talk of a risk assessment team, who are those that make up a risk assessment team?
A health practitioner, health and safety practitioner.
Okay.
First in the line, top management.
I didn't get you.
First in the line is the top management.
Top management.
Technical staff.
Technical
Like
staff. That's
engineers.
very good.
Engineers.
And also knowledgeable staff. People that's got the knowledge and experience.
Okay. That's correct. So the risk assessment, yes, Stella.
Representatives of different departments, health representatives.
Representatives of different departments. Yes. That's good. So when we talk of the composition of a risk assessment team, we are saying that workers who are familiar with the task and the different areas where the activity is to be carried out, health and safety specialists, they should be part of that team. Technical specialists, maybe like you said, mechanical, electrical engineers, line managers, like Alu said, supervisors responsible for the task, and also worker safety representatives. They should be part of a risk assessment team, because that is their representation brings about their involvement. They become involved in health and safety. And by so doing, you know, when employees, they are involved, they feel they belong to that organization. You see, their morale is boosted. So it is always very important to have a worker representative in activities like this. Even in our safety committee meetings, we should have a worker representative. So why are these categories of people? Why are they, why should they be part of the risk assessment team? Because of their experience, the training they have got, their experience in that particular process or that particular activity, their technical knowledge. The health and safety practitioner is coming in with the knowledge of local regulations, their communication and reporting skills, their willingness to do the task should also be considered. So when selecting different individuals to form a risk assessment team, these are the different things or different aspects we should consider before selection. So we're going to look at the 5 steps of a risk assessment. Like you can see, we have step 1, which is identifying the hazards. Step 2, deciding who might be harmed and how. Step 3, evaluate the risk and decide on precautions. Step 4, you record your findings and implement them. And step 5, you review your assessment and update if necessary. So step 1 is identifying the hazards. So how do you identify the hazards? How do you identify the hazards?
Anything that could harm.
Okay.
Sorry?
If there's something that could harm an employee or person, then it would be a hazard. Electrical
Yes, but
or...
yes, how do you identify them?
You can identify them by evaluating the task to be carried out.
You can identify it by observation, through
By observation.
through interview with employees,
By interviewing
through
them.
previous data, if you have previous incident or accident report.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, you can also identify the hazard by the source and form of the hazard.
Yeah, the source, the form. Yes, to an extent. You're correct, Salif.
Inspections. If you do inspections, you can maybe identify
Inspections. That's great. So I think you've exhausted, yeah, the different ways we can identify the hazards. We observe the activity. We carry out workplace inspections. When we'll be looking at monitoring and measuring, we see the different types of inspections that are being carried out in the workplace. We'll look at safety tools, benchmarking, different inspection types, and then consultation with employees. We also have non-inspection techniques like the job hazard analysis. We're going to look at that. Examination of documents like the accident and the illness data, near-miss reports. So these are different ways you can identify the hazards. So that is the very first step. The second step, it says decide who might be harmed and how. So who are those who can be harmed from that activity?
Employees or visitors, anyone working on the site or visiting the site.
Employees, yes.
And workers or operators,
Workers, operators,
cleaners,
cleaners.
visitors.
That's great. So we have employees, we have maintenance workers, contractors, trainees, members of public, visitors, young workers. So all of these group of people are those that can be that can be harmed.
Even equipment.
Equipments. We are looking at those who can be harmed as a result of that activity. So how can they be harmed?
Intoxication.
Intoxication, yes. Depending on the activity. So if they are exposed to biological hazards, chemical hazards, some sort of radiation, some sort of noise, vibration, high temperature, ergonomic, these are different ways in which workers can be harmed. When there is radiation, we'll be looking at all these aspects. They form the different elements: biological hazards, chemical hazards, radiation. We'll be looking at ionizing and non-ionizing radiation, the acute and chronic effects of radiation. Noise. We look at how noise affects individuals. What are the hazards when it comes to noise? What are the control measures? Temperature, stress, how does it affect us? And what are the ways we can control them in a workplace? So from element 5 right up to element 11, these are the aspects we'll be looking at. So step 3 is evaluating the risk and deciding on what precautions to take. So we see step 1, which is the identifying the hazards or the activities. We look at the hazard categories. We have health hazards and safety hazards. Health hazards, we have chemical, biological, physical, psychological. These are the categories. Just what I've been talking about. And safety hazards, we have things like machinery, flying objects, confined space, fire, dangerous substances, electricity, workplace violence. So we also saw the sources of information when we looked at element 1, the internal sources of information and the external sources of information. And for internal sources of information, we have accident records, ill health data or absence records, medical records, risk assessments, maintenance records, safety representative inspections, audits and investigation reports, safety committee meeting minutes. So all of these are internal sources of information. We also have external sources of information, which we treated as well. So when it comes to the hazard identification methods, we have different methods of identifying the hazards like we looked earlier. The task analysis. So we look at the job, we look at the different activities that are involved in that particular task. We try to break them down step by step, such that it will be easier for us to identify the hazard at each stage of the process. So when it comes to task analysis, there is like an acronym which we're using. You select the task, you record the steps and stages of the task. You evaluate the risks associated with each step. You develop a safe working method. You implement the safe working method, and then you monitor to ensure it is effective. So this is just a simple form as well. Conducting a risk assessment, identifying an activity, the steps that are in that, the stages in that particular activity, you evaluate the risk, where you look at the likelihood, you look at the severity. You then come up with control measures. What is a safe way of carrying out that activity? And then you monitor whatever control measures you have put in place to ensure that they are effective. So if you realize at one point that they are not effective, then you need to revise, which is one of the last stages of our risk assessment. So when it comes to legislations, we need to also have knowledge of the legal standards that apply in our workplaces, be it local, be it international. In the UAE, we have the OSHAT Code of Practice. That is the legal standards for Abu Dhabi. That is what is applicable. So we need to go into it. We see the different code of practice and we see which one applies with respect to our activities and what is the best way of managing that activity from what has been presented to us. So when it comes to work at height, what is the law relating to that? Who are those who are supposed to carry out work at height activities? So all those things are being defined in the code of practice. So here they have given us a breakdown of the hazard identification methods. Step 2, we looked at the people who might be harmed. We talked about workers, contractors, visitors, members of public. And step 3, we are evaluating, we are prioritizing the risk. So we look at the likelihood and we look at the severity. So it depends on the type of risk metrics you are using. Let me share something else with you guys for comprehension. Just a minute, let me. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, can you zoom it out? Yeah, there we go.
So when it comes to evaluating the risk, that is step 3, we look at the likelihood, we look at the severity. And what I have on the screen is a 5x5 matrix. We're going to see how to do the different calculations to get the risk rating. Remember, the risk rating it depends on your judgment. It is your judgment of that particular activity that you use to do what to rate it. So we have a 5x5 matrix where we have the likelihood and the severity. So we have different numbers. For the likelihood, number 5 stands for certain and imminent. Number 4 is very likely. Number 3 is likely. Number 2 is unlikely. And number 1 is very unlikely. And same for the severity. The 5 is fatality. 4, measure disabling injury. 3, more than 3 days off work injury illness. 2, measure injury under 3 days off the work. And 1, minor injury, no time off. So we're going to see all that. So this is a typical 5x5 matrix where you have the likelihood and the severity. So if your likelihood, if your severity is 3 and your likelihood is 3, so just look at the y and x axis. When you take the coordinate, when you multiply the severity times the likelihood, you will see where your risk rating falls. So if you take 3 times 3, it means it is what? It is 9. And what does the color 9, what does it stand for? We're going to see the different colors, what do they represent, and how we can manage activities that have been rated at that particular level. So most organizations, they use the 5x5 matrix because it is easy to understand. We also have the 3x3 matrix. So this is the risk rating, like I was saying. When your risk rating is between 13 to 25, like you can see, it is all in